Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are travelling to the windswept plains of southern England, where a ring of ancient stones has stood for nearly 5,000 years, silent, weathered, and still refusing to give up all its secrets. Stonehenge is not just another archaeological site. It is a riddle carved into the earth itself, balanced somewhere between science and spirituality. For centuries, people have tried to answer one question: what was Stonehenge really for? Some see it as an early observatory, built by sky watchers, who mapped the sun and stars long before telescopes existed. They point to the way the stones align perfectly with the solstice sunrises and sunsets, marking the turning points of the year. To them, Stonehenge was humanity's first cosmic clock, a calendar written in shadow and light. Others sense something more spiritual. The massive stones, hauled from miles away, feel less like instruments and more like monuments built not just to measure time, but to honour it. Burials found nearby suggest that it was also a place of passage, where the living gathered to remember the dead and celebrate the mysterious cycle of life, death, and return. Maybe both sides are right. Perhaps Stonehenge was never meant to serve one single purpose. It could have been a sacred meeting place where people watched the heavens and reflected on their place beneath them. In a world without cities or empires, it was already a centre, a place where earth, sky, and humanity met in balance. So tonight, as we look closer at the stones and the stories carved into their silence, we will explore not just what Stonehenge was, but why it continues to capture our imagination, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to be witnessed, not solved. When you stand within the circle of Stonehenge, during sunrise on the summer solstice, the light cuts perfectly through the heelstone and lands inside the monument's heart. That alignment is not random. It shows a precision that would have required generations of observation, a deep, patient relationship with the sky. The builders, whoever they were, clearly understood the sun's path across the horizon. Each stone seems to act like a pointer, tracking moments in the year when light shifts the solstices, the equinoxes, the seasons changing. In a time without written calendars, this alignment might have been how ancient communities kept time, planting, harvesting, and celebrating according to what the sun revealed. It is not just the sun, though. Some researchers believe certain stones line up with lunar cycles as well. The monument may have allowed people to predict eclipses or understand the rhythm of the moon. Imagine what that meant thousands of years ago, to look up, see patterns in the chaos, and feel that the universe had a rhythm humans could join. But this was not cold science. It was devotion. The sky was not just a subject to study. It was a divine presence to honour. The line between astronomy and worship did not exist yet. Watching the solstice, sunrise, was not an experiment. It was a sacred event, filled with song, fire, and awe. In that sense, Stonehenge might have been humanity's first bridge between reason and reverence. A place where measuring the heavens became a way to touch the divine. And maybe that is why the monument still feels alive, because every year, when the sun rises through those stones, the same light touches us that once touched them. It is easy to forget, looking at Stonehenge now, that it did not just appear, people built it. Thousands of them, over centuries, using ropes, sledges, and sheer determination. The largest stones, the sarsens, weigh up to 25 tons each. Some of the smaller bluestones were dragged nearly 200 kilometres from the Preseli Hills in Wales. That is a journey through rivers, forests, and open plains without wheels, without iron tools, and long before roads. The effort alone speaks volumes. This was not a project of convenience. It was a statement of faith, unity, and endurance. The whole communities must have worked together, quarrying, carving, transporting, and erecting stones with only primitive tools. They must have planned every angle, every placement, so that each stone fit into the greater design. The construction spanned generations. That means some who started the work never saw it finished. Children would have grown up watching their parents raise the stones, inheriting both the knowledge and the purpose behind it. In a world where survival was already a daily struggle, they still found the will to build something meant to outlast them. It is this human element that makes Stonehenge even more haunting. The monument is not just about mystery. It is about devotion to the sky, to the community, to the idea that what we create can reach beyond our own lives. Every groove carved into the stone carries fingerprints of people who believed in something bigger than themselves. And that is maybe the real miracle, not how they moved the stones, but why they did. Because even without machines, they built something strong enough to survive time and silent enough to keep its secrets. Not far from the stones, archaeologists have uncovered cremated remains, men, women, even children, buried in small pits around the circle. Some date back to the earliest phase of Stonehenge's construction, long before the towering sarcens were raised. That discovery reshaped what we thought we knew about the monument. It was not just a stage for rituals under the open sky. It was also a cemetery. The dead seemed to have been chosen carefully. Many were people of high status, perhaps leaders, healers, or figures who held spiritual power in their communities. To bury them within or near Stonehenge may have been a way of keeping them close to the heavens they once studied or served. The monument, then, was not only a clock of light and shadow, it was a gateway. Imagine the scene thousands of years ago, a procession of mourners walking through the mist, carrying ashes in small urns, the rising sun illuminating the stones ahead. The ceremony might have honoured both the end of a life and the turning of a season, binding human loss to the rhythm of the earth and sky. In that sense, Stonehenge blurred the line between life and death. It was not a place to fear mortality, but to understand it, to accept that, like the sun, every setting was followed by a return. The architecture itself reflects this cycle, circles within circles, no clear beginning or end. So perhaps Stonehenge was never meant to separate the worlds of the living and the dead. It united them, reminding early humans that existence, whether in flesh or spirit, was part of a larger pattern. The stones still whisper that truth if you listen long enough. Nothing ends, it only changes form. When you stand inside Stonehenge, surrounded by massive stones forming perfect arcs, there is a strange stillness, as if the air itself remembers something sacred. The circular layout is not accidental. In ancient symbolism, circles often represented eternity, unity, and the endless flow of time. For the builders, shaping the monument this way may have been their way of mirroring the universe, a physical echo of the sun's path and the cycles of life. They saw around them. To them, the world was alive. The sun, moon, and earth were not objects. They were forces, spirits, presences. Stonehenge could have been where those presences met, a stage where nature, death, and divinity spoke the same language. The people who gathered there probably did not separate science from faith. Measuring light and offering prayers were part of the same act, understanding the world by honoring it. The stones themselves seemed to hold that reverence. Each one was carefully shaped and placed, not for decoration, but meaning. Some researchers suggest that the smaller blue stones, thought to possess healing powers, were positioned near the center for rituals of renewal. Others imagine fires burning between the pillars, songs rising to the sky, and shadows dancing around the ring ceremonies, meant to connect the human spirit to the cosmos. Whatever their exact purpose, Stonehenge's design shows how deeply ancient people felt their place within nature's rhythm. They built something that did not just mark time, it celebrated it. A reminder that every dawn and dusk, every life and death, was part of one continuous circle. And maybe that is why the monument still feels sacred today. You can't walk among those stones without sensing that it was built not just to stand against time, but to belong to it. Archaeology suggests that Stonehenge was not an isolated monument lost on a lonely plain. It was the center of a whole landscape of activity, surrounded by smaller henges, burial mounds, and ancient pathways. Evidence of animal bones and pottery fragments nearby points to large gatherings, possibly seasonal festivals, that brought distant tribes together. People likely traveled for days, even weeks, to reach this place. They came carrying food, tools, and stories, converging beneath the open sky to eat, trade, sing, and take part in rituals that bound them as a people. In a world without towns or temples, Stonehenge may have been one of the first shared destinations, a kind of prehistoric pilgrimage site. Imagine the atmosphere during the solstice, fires burning, drums echoing across the chalk hills, families camping in the grass, and the rising sun threading its light through the stones. It must have felt like standing inside the heartbeat of the world, a moment when everyone, for once, looked in the same direction. These gatherings probably served more than spiritual needs. They were also social glue. People exchanged goods, formed alliances, perhaps even chose leaders or partners. The monument, with its sheer size and mystery, gave weight to those moments, a reminder that their small lives were part of something vast. And maybe that was Stonehenge's quiet genius. It turned the act of coming together into something cosmic. The stones did not just measure time or honor the dead. They gave people a reason to gather, to witness the same sunrise, and to remember they belonged to both earth and sky. Even now, every solstice, thousands return to that same field. Different faces, same longing to stand among strangers and feel, if only for a moment, like part of something older than memory. Over time, Stonehenge grew into more than a monument. It became a symbol, a silent link between human existence and the forces that shape it. The alignment of stone and sky was not just clever engineering, it was philosophy carved in rock. Each shadow, each shaft of light, reminded those who gathered there that they lived inside a grand pattern, one far larger than their daily struggles. In that sense, Stonehenge may have taught without words. Its geometry reflected ideas that would later appear in myth and art. That balance matters, that life moves in cycles, and that humans belong to the same rhythm as the sun and moon. For early societies still trying to define their place in the world, that realization could have been both comforting and humbling. The monument also carried power because of what it represented: stability. The stones did not move or change while everything else did. Seasons shifted, people were born and died, generations passed. Yet Stonehenge remained. It offered something humans rarely had: permanence. A reminder that even as time turns, something endures. This may be why later cultures adopted Stonehenge into their legends. To the Celts, it became a site of magic and wisdom. To medieval writers, a place of mystery built by giants or wizards. To modern minds, it is a relic of forgotten knowledge. The meanings shifted, but the feeling stayed. Awe. That is the real cultural weight of Stonehenge. It stands as proof that long before written language or organized religion, people were already searching for connection to each other, to the sky, to the idea that we might matter in the great machinery of the universe. And maybe, just maybe, the stones still whisper that we do. Every generation has looked at Stonehenge and seen something different. To the early antiquarians of the 17th century, it was a druid temple, the imagined home of ancient priests, performing mysterious rites beneath the rising sun. Later, Victorian explorers saw it as a relic of a vanished civilization, perhaps even evidence of lost knowledge from Atlantis. In the 20th century, some began to imagine alien visitors or time travelers, as if the stones were too precise, too deliberate to be human. Each theory says less about Stonehenge and more about the people proposing it. The Druids reflected a nostalgia for Britain's mythical past. The Victorians projected their obsession with progress and hidden empires. The modern fascination with extraterrestrials reveals our fear that something so perfect could not have come from us. The stones became a mirror, showing us our own beliefs, doubts, and longing for the extraordinary. And yet, there is a quiet truth buried in all those competing ideas. No single explanation will ever fit. Stonehenge is layered, scientific, spiritual, cultural, and each new discovery simply deepens the mystery rather than resolves it. The monument endures precisely because it can hold so many meanings at once. That is why, even now, it keeps evolving. Archaeologists use lasers and ground sensors to map hidden features beneath the soil. Historians trace migration routes that might explain how people gathered here. Meanwhile, artists and dreamers still visit the site at dawn, searching for something words can't quite name. Stonehenge invites every age to rewrite its story, and maybe that is the point. The stones remain the same, but what we see in them changes, reminding us that mystery is not a flaw in history. It is the heartbeat that keeps it alive. After centuries of excavation and debate, most researchers now agree on one thing. Stonehenge was not built for a single reason. It was not only a temple, nor purely a calendar, nor just a cemetery. It was all of those things, a layered creation, where the practical and the sacred coexisted. Its astronomical precision suggests a society that watched the heavens closely, using the stones to mark time. Yet the burials, the fires, the traces of feasting all point to deep emotion, rituals tied to life and death, hope and farewell. It may have been a place where people honored ancestors, healed the sick, celebrated harvests, and marked transitions in both seasons and lives. That blend of purposes reveals something essential about early humans. They did not divide the world into separate boxes like we do now. Science, art, faith, and daily survival were not competing fields. They were one experience. The same sunrise that helped them plant crops also reminded them of divine power. A funeral was not just mourning. It was part of the same cycle that guided stars and seasons. Stonehenge embodied that unity. The act of gathering there, watching the solstice light, sharing food and memory, would have blurred the line between the ordinary and the eternal. Every visit reaffirmed that humans were not apart from nature's rhythm, they were inside it. Even the way the stones interact with light reinforces that message. The monument comes alive at certain moments: sunrise, sunset, midwinter, midsummer, then falls silent again, as if breathing with the earth. So instead of asking what Stonehenge was, maybe the better question is how it worked, as a living calendar, a sacred theatre, and a meeting ground for all the ways early people tried to make meaning out of existence. After thousands of years, the stones still stand, weathered but unbroken, drawing travellers, scholars, and wanderers alike. No matter how many theories pile up, Stonehenge refuses to settle into certainty. It keeps a distance enough to be seen, never quite to be understood, and that is what gives it power. Its silence speaks louder than any explanation. We can measure its alignments, date the soil, trace the origins of each rock, yet the deeper meaning slips through. Maybe that is because Stonehenge was never built to be explained. It was meant to be felt. The awe people experience there is not born from logic, but from recognition, a quiet sense that whoever raised these stones wanted to touch something eternal. That feeling has not faded. Each year, thousands gather for the solstice, just as people might have 5 millennia ago. When the first light spills through the stones, you can hear a kind of hush, a pause, where the modern world disappears. For a moment, everyone stands in the same ancient rhythm, watching the sun perform the same ritual it has since the beginning. Stonehenge endures because it bridges time. It reminds us that wonder is not something new, it is inherited. The same curiosity that once drove its builders still lives in us, whispering questions we can't quite answer. Maybe the purpose of Stonehenge was never to define the cosmos, but to remind humanity of its place within it, small, curious, and connected. A monument not to knowledge achieved, but to mystery accepted. And perhaps that is the quiet truth behind those stones, that understanding everything was never the goal. Sometimes it is enough just to look and feel the pull of something older than history, still watching the horizon with us.